So I was also curious about from a business standpoint, businessman in the scent industry, reviewing some of the demos of your product and articles. Many of them highlighted typical cliches and assumptions that surround scent and the scent industry, for example, that our sense of smell is connected to emotion and memory, and that it's the most primal sense, and that it's undervalued and misunderstood. And this was something that I really found interesting, was that many of the people who demo your product say, "Oh, that's convincing. This is convincing." So as a small entrepreneur, how did you navigate these challenges and decide on how to communicate the mission of your business, of your product, and kind of navigate these challenges of wordings and things that surround the usability of your product?
I mean, it is a ongoing and probably eternal challenge. People just don't care about their sense of smell in the same way that they care about vision and audition. So it can be a challenge to kind of say the right thing or describe it in a way that gets people to understand, value, and kind of fall in love with their sense of smell in a way where they see the utility in it enough to spend money on it. But there's a few things that are kind of happening right now that help. One is, and by the way, like when someone actually tries it, when they actually experience, it just totally makes sense. So like, oh, I get it now. It's the same way that like I wasn't there, in the 20s or whatever, but the first time you see good color TV, right? You're like, oh yeah, that's like that's a lot better. Like I don't really want to do black and white TV anymore, right? And that's, so sometimes it can be hard to articulate, but once you try it, you're like, yes, this is, I'm not a spectator in this experience anymore. I am like living it. I'm here. But short of trying it, it's definitely a challenge to say, hey, digital scent is important for these reasons. And even if people kind of rationally follow the argument, they're like, I don't know how important it actually is. However, a lot of people lost their sense of smell during COVID. And for those people and for the researchers and the journalists who heard and told those stories, it became really evident how critical your sense of smell is in being a human. There is this really good article in the New York Times by Brooke Jarvis about scent and COVID and losing your sense of smell. And I'm going to not get this quote quite right, but basically the people she talked to said, living life without scent is like living it in black and white or like trapped behind a sheet of glass. And everyone's sense of normalcy disappeared when they lost their sense of smell. And that's not kind of like a dramatic way to describe it. This is like people describing their experience when they lose their sense of smell. And so to think about how much time we spend every day in front of a screen and how that's increasingly going to become screens, VR headsets, glasses, those kinds of things. Like, I don't think we want to have that experience in our lives collectively, because that's exactly what's going on right now, is that we have this kind of digitally induced anosmia or lack of smell. And so I think people took their sense of smell a lot more seriously when they lost it or they saw people losing it. And now we know that it's not just like a cute, nice to have thing where I can smell grandma's cookies. It's like, oh, wow, like this really contributes to our social connections, to our sense of well-being, and to our joy and like lust for life. So I think that we're going to keep hammering our message away of scent is critical, scent is important, scent is wonderful, don't you want it? But these other things too that are happening in the real world, I think, are creating this moment, this kind of like a little bit of a renaissance that scent is having that it hasn't had in the past.
Yeah, and smell always has this gimmicky aspect to it, which sometimes works in our favor or doesn't. And I think that gimmicky factor sometimes gives it like a childish thing, like, oh, it's for children, or it's not important, or something like that. And I find that also interesting in the work we do with Odeuropa as well, that sometimes that happens. But I think this anosmia awareness that happened with COVID also it's so strong and also so important. And losing our sense of smell is so difficult. And so yeah. And I know one friend of mine who lost their sense of smell during COVID, and he's like, I couldn't smell myself anymore. I didn't know what I smelled like, if I needed to shower, or, things like this. It's so important that we have our sense of smell for our daily life, to just know where we're going, what we're doing. And but hopefully this will we will continue our work, and people will spread the word. Sometimes with smell you have to take a few steps back to get it in people's head, right?